Do you want to know the most popular goalie gear that was used this year in the NHL? Let's dive into it and look at the advanced stats. What's going on, everyone? My name is Dudo, and I'm the Goalie Gear Snob, and for those of you that may or may not know, I'm the Dallas Stars emergency backup goaltender. And while I was able to be at all 41 of 41 home games this past year, I made sure to film at least one team one time. I know I wasn't able to film some twice, but I was able to film pretty much every team that came through, and I did a really good job of taking care of their stats and their gear and breaking down what they're wearing. So today we're going to be looking at the advanced stats, and I'm going to be going over the top 8 major categories, and I'm going to go over the most popular gear, some of the least popular gear, and break things down by the numbers. So let's dive into it now. So before we get into the major categories, I just want to clarify a few things here. I'm going to be looking at the number of 65. I filmed 65 goalies this year, and technically I only filmed 62 of them, but I'm including 3 more in this countdown just because I think they're important. First one being Scott Wedgwood. I was not able to film him this year due to his trade, but I'm including his gear in the stats here. I was also not able to film Anthony Stolarz with the Maple Leafs or Linus Ullmark with the Senators, but because those are big recognizable names, I'm adding those 3 into the categories here. So keep in mind, we're looking at 65 of the total goalies I filmed this past year. I'm not including every goalie in the NHL, just 65 goalies that I filmed. I think that's a pretty strong sample size. So starting with the skates first, I'm going to go over the most popular skates, and with 53 of the 65 total goalies, we had true goalie skate. I'm sure that's not a surprise to anyone that knows how big true goalie skates are across the market, but when we look at the actual breakdown, we have 53 of 65 goalies using that, which is roughly 82% of the sample size. 6 of 65 are using CCMs, and surprisingly 6 of 65 are also using Bauer. Pretty interesting that CCM and Bauer are tied there, kind of tied for second or third place, however you want to break it down, but True is definitely dominating in this category. Let's look over a few of the interesting breakdowns of what exactly they're using. So starting with True, we have 22 goalies using the True 2-piece skate with a Vertex edge holder, 16 were using 1-piece skates, and 11 were using the 2-piece skate with the shift holder. That means that there's more goalies using the 2-piece skate than the 1-piece skate, basically in a 3-to-1 ratio, and I'm really not surprised by those numbers at all. But I've kind of teased this and talked about it the entire year, and a lot of people have asked me why are the Vertex holders so popular, and it's probably one of the most honest and kind of like brutally honest answers I can give. It's just what a lot of the equipment managers prefer. So with the ease of the Vertex trigger to be able to pop the steel in and out, that's why a lot of goalies and equipment managers really prefer it in the pros. It's so easy to get that steel, sharpen it, carry more of it around, and pop it in and out of that holder. I'm not saying you can't do that with the shift holder, but you still have to use a special tool to pop it in and pop it out. But the Vertex holder just works really well, especially with that 3mm steel. I mean, goalies just absolutely love it. Next one, we're looking at the CCM skates. We have 2 goalies that are using the E-Flex 6 skates, 2 goalies that are using the AS3 Super Tax. We have 1 goalie using the E-Flex 6 with a Vertex holder, and 1 goalie using the AS1 Super Tax skates. Then when we look at Bauer, again, interesting that there's 6 goalies using CCM boots, 6 goalies using the Bauer boots as well. You break those numbers down, we have 3 goalies using the Connect skates, 1 goalie using the Bauer Pros, 1 goalie using the Bauer Pro with a Vertex holder, as where the other one was using the 1/100 holder, and then we have another goalie using the 2X Pro skates. So pretty crazy when you look at those numbers that you have almost the same amount of goalies using the E-Flex 6 boots as the Connect boots. So take that as you will when you're shopping at retail. Next, we're going to be looking at the helmets. So again, I'm sure this is not going to surprise anyone when I break it down by the numbers, but in the number 1 spot, we have Pro's Choice, followed by Bauer, CCM, and Wall masks. So pretty interesting when you're looking at these numbers here, that 31 out of 65 goalies are using a Pro's Choice helmet. That's about 48% of this sample size. So again, Pro's Choice is owned by Mike Vaughn and a small group, So while there's no Vaughn logos on the helmet, you could argue it really is Vaughn that's owning it. But Don Malerba and his son are doing a great job of building these helmets that are so well used and loved by the pros. They have a special process that goes into the helmet that makes it great for impact, super comfortable. They're easily paintable. They have a lot of painting space on the helmet, and guys just absolutely love them. So I'm not surprised that almost half of the sample size of goalies I filmed are using the Pro's Choice. Then when you look at the Bauer helmets, we have 23 out of 65 goalies. CCM, we have 8 of the 65, and Wall, we have 3 of the 65. When you break down those numbers of who's using what, we have, again, 31 goalies using the Pro's Choice. 22 are using the Bauer profile. We have 1 using the Bauer enemy, Vasilevsky. Then we have 7 goalies using the CCM Axis Pro, which is the original Pro version of the helmet. 1 goalie using the CCM Axis XF Pro, and 3 Wall W10s, not the W12s. Interesting note on that, but I found all the helmets are posted on Instagram and labeled as a W10, so must be something cool about those. But now that we've broke down the skates and the helmets, let's get into sticks. Now that we're going to be looking at the stick category, this is an interesting one where I'm basically just going off of the graphic. I can't really break down the exact core or model, but for everyone that, or for folks that may or may not know, whenever you look at the graphic of gear, it's generally not the exact same core. I'm just strictly going off of graphic here, so I'm sure it's not going to be completely accurate, but now that we got that out of the way, let's go over the breakdown by the numbers. We have 26 of the 65 goalies using Bauer sticks, which is 40%. Then we have 19 of the 65 using Warrior sticks, which is 29%, almost a third, so that's pretty cool. True, we have 11 of the 65 goalies, which is 17%. And then CCM, we have 9 of the 65, which is about 14%. So pretty interesting breakdown when we're looking at, third and fourth spot there, but a pretty big gap between 1 and 2. And when we break down the numbers for Bauer, we have 18 goalies using the Bauer Hyperlight 2, 8 of them using the Shadows. And then with the Warriors, we have a good amount of the RV2s and RV4s. I don't think anyone was using the M series. Again, it might just be the graphic, but I don't think anyone is using the M series this year. I do have a small kind of thought process of that, but I don't want to say it here in the video and kind of cause any crazy speculation as to why, but let's just focus on why those V series sticks are there. They're pretty solid. Next, when we look at the true sticks, we have a pretty even split of 9x4 versus 9x3. I know towards the end of the season in the playoffs, we saw a few guys using the new hazardous smoke sticks, so pretty interesting to see those. Maybe we'll see some more next season. Now the CCM sticks, we have 8 of the 9 are using the CCM Axis XF Pro, and 1 of them is still using the eFlex 5 Pro lights. Pretty wild, but that's the breakdown of the sticks, so I'm not surprised that the Bauer Hyperlight 2s were kind of taken off in popularity there. Again, just the graphic, but take that with a grain of salt. But now that we went over all of those categories, let's break it down into the chest and pants. All right, so looking at the chest protector category, this is where things get pretty interesting, where you see spots 1 and 2 are occupied by CCM and Vaughn. CCM has 1 model, pretty much, they have 2 different versions, a year versions between the 2018 and the 2024, but that CCM Pro chest dominates. When you look at the second spot, you have Vaughn chests, and there's so many different Vaughn models that goalies are using. So I just think it's pretty interesting that so many goalies with Vaughn are just kind of wearing like one-offs or whatever they've worn before, now in an NHL spec version. But CCM goalies and CCM chests are pretty much just wearing the same style. So out of 65 goalies, you have 39 of them that are wearing the CCM Pro, which is 60%. Again, not surprised by that. I wore that chest protector for a really, really, really long time, and I love the fit and feel of it. It is a little bit bulkier, but for someone like me that just fills in for pro practices and takes hard shots, like I need that protection. If you're going to be playing like men's level, like B, it, D, C, whatever, it's probably going to be too much for you, but then again, that chest protector is going to last you 5-6 years. It's never going to break down to the level that you're at. Might take a little bit to break in, but I think it's worth it in my opinion. When we look at Vaughn, we have 14 of the 65 goalies using Vaughn, which is 22%. And for Bryans, we have 6 of the 65. Bauer, we have 5 of the 65. Pretty wild that Brian's is more popular than Bauer when it comes to the chest, and then 1 goalie using the Konecny chest still. But when we look at the Brian stuff, we have 5 of the 6 goalies using the Optic 2, with Jeremy Swayman wearing the Optic 3. And then when we look at the Bauer models, almost everyone is using the Hyperlight 1 because the Hyperlight 2 and on, they are not NHL spec. The Hyperlight 1 and the Pro are the only 2 NHL spec chests available until Bauer releases their new version, which is what Vasilevsky was wearing this year. I'm not 100% sure on the name of the model, if it's going to be Flylight or a new version of Flylight, or maybe something under a new Pro name, but looks pretty interesting. And I honestly would like to try one out, as I really liked my Hyperlight 1. The single solitary Konecny goalie is Connor Hellebuck. Not surprised there. The guy's a creature of habit, and he likes what he likes. I'm interested to see what he's going to do in the future, if he decides to stick with it or try something new now that Konecny is no longer building chests. And then just want to make one note here with Vaughn, that I'm going to list off all of the chest protector models that folks are wearing. So again, this is going to total 14 goalies of the 65 I filmed. We had 4 goalies using the VE9, 3 using the VE8, 1 in a Vision 9500, 1 in an LT98, 1 in a V6 2200, 1 in a V5 7800, 1 in an SLR3, 1 mystery Vaughn unit that Dobesh was wearing and not 100% sure of what it is, and then 1 Vaughn Epic 8800. I did incorrectly speak in the New York Rangers breakdown video. I did mention that Jonathan Quick was in a V4 chest. I misspoke. He's actually in an Epic 8800 and has been for a very long time, so my apologies there, but that is just me clarifying it here. But now that we looked at the chests, let's take a look at the pants as well, and I'll tell you about how Vaughn dominated. So when I say Vaughn dominated this category, this is an astounding number that kind of shocked me as I was looking at it. Like, I knew Vaughn was high, but this is crazy when I break down the numbers. So I'm going to go in reverse order here, kind of like 4, 3, 2, 1, just to add a little bit of mystique, and I'm going to save the info I put up on the right side there to kind of act as a little bit of a surprise. But in 4th place, we have 2 of the 65 goalies are using Brian's, 6 of the 65 are using Bauer pants, 6 of the 65 are using CCM pants. And then when we look at Vaughn, we have 51 out of 65 goalies, which is about 80%. That is a crazy stat to me, that Vaughn pants dominated that much. And when you break down the number of that, we have a good amount of goalies that are using the SLR3 and a lot that are using the Vaughn Velocity. So we actually have 29 that are using the SLR3, 20 that are using the Velocity, and 2 that are still in the Vaughn Ventus, which is kind of like the original version of the SLR. But the reason why I believe that the SLR3 pants are so popular is because on Vaughn pants, they have a very distinct pad on the inside of the leg that sits almost like a big pillow on the inside of the thighs. And then when you squeeze together, the air lets out of those pillows and you can close your legs and get them to the right spot that you need them to. But when you're standing still and just hanging out there and relaxing, the pants tend to flare out a little bit more on the body. Still NHL spec, still signed off by K. Whitmore, but it's just super interesting that the way they sit on the body, they kind of flare out a little bit more. And because of this stat, that's the reason why I ordered myself some SLR3 pants. So they are sitting in the closet, but I'll break down the protective gear a little bit later in the summer, maybe towards the fall. But I did get myself some SLR3 pants. Really appreciate Ed for putting that one together for me. When we're looking at the other brands, we're looking at CCM, where they have 6 of their goalies using a 14A pant. That is their pretty much only NHL spec model that is preferred. They do have another older version with elastic in the front, but no one wears those anymore. They just like the laces in the front. Those Bauer users are using the Bauer Pro model. Again, that's pretty much their only NHL spec version, is that Bauer Pro. It's very close to the retail pant, and that's what I wore last year, and I really liked it, but I just want to go with something a little bit wider, hence the Vaughns. And then the Bryans, we have the Optic 3 pant, or their Pro pant, which Shesterkin and Vejmelka are also using. So again, this is a pretty interesting category to look at for the pants. So if you have the opportunity to try on the pants at the retail level, I absolutely suggest trying on the SLR pant. You can get them pretty tight to the body, or you can keep them nice and wide to be able to tuck. The internal belt comes in and out at retail. Of course, for NHL spec, they're not allowed, so they have to be removed. But it's just a really interesting thing that I suggest goalies looking at, because the pants are a lot more comfortable once you're out on the ice and once you're wearing them than they kind of look on the shelf. So I definitely recommend you shopping them. But now that we looked at the chest and pants, this is going to be a really long segment where we get into the blocker, glove, and pads, and I'm going to do my best to break down all the different models that everyone is using. So let's dive on in. So while we look at the next three categories, there's not going to be any surprise that True is in first place out of all of these positions here, but it's just pretty interesting when you look at what True goalies are wearing. I mean, I have everything broken down by graphic and then by core. So I'm specifically going to speak on, if it's a PX5 graphic, it's going to be a 595 or a 615 core. So that's kind of how I'm going to look at it. Or like, for example, Jake Ottinger, he's using a Bauer Shadow graphic, but it's actually an ultrasonic blocker. So keep that in mind as you watch through this chapter here and as I go over all of those models. But in first place, we have True with 29 out of 65 goalies, which is about 45%. So almost half of the pros that I filmed this year were using a True blocker, which is a wild number, a wild way to look at it. Bauer, we have 17 out of 65. Vaughn, we have 9 out of 65. CCM, 6 out of 65. And then Brian's 4 out of 65. So kind of rounding everything out. I'm sure these numbers really aren't surprising anyone based off of what you see, but when you get into the graphic and the core is when things start getting a little silly. So breaking down the graphic and the core specifically for True and True only, we have 12 goalies that were using the True PX5 and the 595 blocker. We have 2 that are using the PX5 with a 615 model. Again, that little bit of a stiffer sidewall with the different kind of shape to it. I didn't get into if they have opti angle or a regular face. That was very tough for me to try to discern this year, so I'm kind of just omitting that from the stats here, but it is something I want to look at in the future. Then we have 1 goalie that is using the L12.1 in a 595 with the PX5 graphic. 3 goalies using the PX4 595, 1 using the PX4 615, 1 using the L4.1 595 PX4, 1 using an L12.1 595 with a PX4, different from the goalie using the PX5 graphic. And we have 3 goalies that were still using the PX3 595. They pretty much did switch out to the PX5 graphic by the end of the year, but I was just going based off the time I filmed them. 1 goalie still using the PX3 615 model, 1 goalie using the L95 and the 595 model, another using the L87 PX5 615, then someone using the L85 PX5 595, and 1 goalie using the True L20.2 in the 595. That was a lot of models. Keep in mind, all of this is going to be in the description of the video. Now looking at Bauer and Vaughn, when I break down their blockers, there's a lot of goalies still using the ultrasonic blocker, and I get it. I love it. There's 7 goalies that were using the ultrasonic core with various graphics and various things on them, but I get it. The ultrasonic blocker is probably one of the best ones I've ever used, and just something about the pop off of it is just, it's unreal. The palm size was perfect, the wrist articulation, I mean, it was beautiful. It's great. So we have 4 goalies using the DigiPrint graphic in the ultrasonic core, 2 using a DigiPrint graphic with the Vapor 2-piece, 1 using the DigiPrint, which was a mock core, 1 DigiPrint, which was a 2S Pro core, 2 goalies using the Shadow graphic in a Vapor 2-piece, 2 goalies using the Shadow graphic with an ultrasonic core, 2 Shadows with a mock, 2 actual regular stock Bauer Shadows, which is pretty crazy, and then 1 goalie using the Hyperlight 2 graphic with an ultrasonic core. That is Vasilevsky. He has then switched to Vapor, the Vapor Flylight graphic, but all of his gear is still pretty much the exact same Supreme that he was using before. Now when we look at Vaughn gear, this is where it gets pretty interesting. Again, a lot of different cores, a lot of different graphics, but the most popular was 3 of those Vaughn goalies were using the SLR4. And we have 1 goalie using the SLR4 graphic with an SLR3 core, 1 goalie using the SLR3 graphic with an SLR2 core, that was Calvin Picard. Then we have 2 Vaughn VX1 graphics. 1 was a V9 core, 1 was a V10 core. That was Mrazek and Quick, respectively. Then 1 Vaughn V10, which is an XP, and then a Pulse graphic and an XP. The XP is kind of like the original version of the SLR4, so I can't quite call it an SLR4 because when you're ordering through Vaughn, it is 2 separate spec sheets, but they are almost identical in terms of the blocker board. And then for CCM and Brian's, we have 2 eFlex 7 blockers, 1 all-out graphic with an eFlex 7, 1 eFlex 6 blocker, and then 1 eFlex 7 graphic with an eFlex 5 core, Dustin Wolf, and then 1 CCM Access XF Pro. I started saying Stuart Skinner before I even finished the sentence, but he's the only goalie wearing Access Pro in the show this year. Jet Greaves was also wearing it, but again, I'm just going based off of what I filmed and what I have written down here. And then for Brian's, we have 2 Optic 4 blockers, 1 iconic graphic with an Optic 4 core, that was Jake Allen, and then 1 full stock Brian's icon. So I know what you guys are thinking. This is a lot of information that's just very tough to digest. I'm doing my best to put all the text over here up on the screen. I'm doing my best to put it down in the description. There is a plan for me to try to put this information out onto like an online database for those to view. I'm just working out where it's going to be hosted, whether I'm going to host it, whether another reputable company is going to be putting it out there for me. So just keep in mind, I'm doing my best. If you want to try to go over some numbers, feel free to comment down below. I'll try to fill in some gaps until I can put out all of this Excel information onto a website. But let's dive into the gloves here. Again, no surprise, we have True and First, Bauer, Vaughn, CCM, Brian's, pretty much the exact same order we were just in, but the numbers slightly varied. 31 out of 65 goalies in True, 16 out of 65 in Bauer, 9 out of 65 in Vaughn, 5 out of 65 in CCM, and 4 out of 65 in Brian's. And I did just want to make one giant clarification here. I went even deeper and I tried to look over the different breaks of the gloves and then even the tees that are preferred between those goalies. So I know everyone right now is talking about how 580 gloves are super popular, about how everyone loves them and blah, 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 this, that, and the other thing. I mean, my numbers aren't lying. 580s are the least preferred glove out of goalies used in the NHL this year that I filmed. Again, I'm not looking at every goalie that had 1 GP in the entire season. I'm just looking at those that I filmed. But when we break down the numbers, I'm grouping all 600 breaks, 590s and 580s across all manufacturers. So like for example, I'm going to include for 600, I'm going to include the CCM, eFlex 5, 6, 7, 600s. Then I'm going to look at Bauer Shadows, Bauer Ultrasonics, and like a Vaughn VX1 or V10. I'm including all of those as a 600 style break due to that lateral nature. So in terms of popularity, we have the 600 break with 26 out of 65 goalies, which is 40%. Then we have the 590, which is 24 out of 65 goalies, which is 37%. And then in the last, 15 of 65 goalies in the 580 breaks. So when we look at the T's of the glove, we have the double T, which has 49 out of 65 goalies using it, which is 75% of the goalies that I filmed in the double T. Then we have 15 out of 65 in the single T, then 1 in a single offset. So pretty much out of every 4 goalies, 3 of them are using a double T. So just let that kind of be your guiding light when you're shopping at the retail level. Now let's break down the numbers of the graphic and the core for True. So the most popular True glove was the True PX5 590 break. So pretty interesting that more True goalies are preferring the 590 with 10 goalies using that. 4 using the PX5 600. Then we have 4 goalies using the True PX4 590, 1 using an L4.1 590. I'm air quoting around 590 because I'm not allowed to call it the previous name that everybody knows. Then we have the PX4 600, 1 goalie in a PX3 590, 1 goalie in a PX3 580, 1 goalie in a PX3 2-piece 590, which is John Gibson. I hate his gear. Go watch that video, but I love the 2-piece 590. We get 1 goalie in the PX5, in the L95 graphic, which is an L4.1 Core 600 Flurry. Then we have 2 goalies in the L87 PX5 580, 1 goalie in an L87 PX5 600. Again, that's, the L87 is a graphic, PX5 is pretty much the exact core of it. And then 1 goalie in the L20.2 590. So that is True gloves as a whole. Quick look at Bauer gloves. We have a lot of 600 gloves that are dominating for Bauer, with 3 ultrasonic gloves and a digiprint graphic, 2 2S Pro digiprints. Then we have 1 digiprint, which is an actual shadow, 4 stock Bauer shadows, which is crazy. So all of those gloves I just listed are all 600 breaks and have some variant like basically same style closure, but slight differences. So pretty interesting that Bauer 600s are dominating. One Vapor 90 glove in a shadow graphic, one shadow graphic with an ultrasonic core, one shadow graphic with a mock core, one shadow graphic with a Hyperlight 2 core, which is Eustace Annunen, and then two Goalies with a Hyperlight 2 graphic, but is a shadow core. So again, 600 breaks are dominating for Bauer. Then let's wrap everything together with Vaughn, CCM, and Brian's. So for Vaughn, we have three SLR4 70-degree breaks, one SLR4 60-degree break. We have one SLR3 graphic with an SLR2 core, that is Calvin Picard, one VX1 graphic with a V9 core, one VX1 graphic with a V10 core. Again, those are Mrazek and Quick respectively, and then one stock Vaughn V10 glove. Then we have a Pulse graphic, which is the XP60, again, different from the SLR60 semantics, but again, just have to clarify because they are two different gloves on the line from Vaughn. Then looking at CCM, we have one eFlex 7 580, one eFlex 7, that's a eFlex 5 600, that is Dustin Wolf, again, eFlex 7 graphic, eFlex 5 core in the 600 break. Then we have one eFlex 6 580, which is still Thatcher Demko. We have David Riddick wearing the CCM all-out graphic in the eFlex 6 581. I have no idea how he likes the 581. The 581, the 591 were dropped by CCM due to just poor sales, customer feedback, you name it. It just wasn't that popular. Crazy he is using that. And then Stuart Skinner in the Axis XF Pro 580. Then rounding everything up with Brian's, we have two Optic 4s, one iconic graphic with an Optic 4 core, and then one Brian's Eclipse, and that belongs to Aiden Hill. So pretty crazy that Brian's, out of their 4 users, they have 3 Optics and 1 Eclipse. Pretty wild. But now let's get into everyone's favorite category, the pads. Just like the glove category, I didn't only want to break down the model and what goalies were wearing, but I wanted to break down the actual strapping as well. So I looked at knee strapping and I looked at the boot strapping. So I will be breaking down those numbers. And then we look at the brands here. It's the exact same lineup as the glove and blocker with True, Bauer, Vaughn, CCM, and Brian's. The numbers change a little bit slightly there. Think of goalies like Jacob Markstrom that have the True glove, CCM pads, and blocker. Kind of causes the numbers to fluctuate a little bit. But we have 30 out of 65 goalies using True, 16 out of 65 in Bauer, 9 out of 65 in Vaughn, 6 out of 65 in CCM, and 4 out of 65 in Brian's. When we look at the knee strapping of all of the gear, I'm looking at across and then down to the calf, or both in this instance here. So across is pretty much just strapping directly across the knee block to that outer knee wrap there. And then the calf, of course, down to the calf wrap, whether it's on the outside or inside, like UC Saros goes to the inside of the calf wrap. And then both would be like Shesterkin. He's the only one, so it's kind of get him out of the way. But we look at the popularity, again, a lot of people think that going down to the calf is popular. It's actually not. It's going across the knee, where we have 34 of 65 goalies are preferring to go across the knee, which is 52%. So a little bit more than the 46% or the 30 of 65 goalies of the goalies I filmed. So pretty interesting there, pretty split. But whenever I help people out, they always think that the dominant one is to go down to the calf. But I still recommend going across the knee. I mean, I switched back to it this year and found that my pads work way better, way more support on the body. So I definitely recommend it. And then when we look at the bootstrapping of the gear, I'm going with none, behind, or under. So none being the most popular one, we have 37 of the 65 goalies I filmed were not using any sort of bootstrap, which that kind of is the most popular option here. That's why at retail, you don't see a lot of pads that come with a bootstrap, but at the custom level, of course, you can add that in there. Then when you go the next second popular version, you have going behind the ankle, which is behind the heel. 15 of 65 goalies are using that. And then if you go under the heel, or kind of through the middle of the skate, I just kind of classified it as under, not like middle or ankle, whatever. We have 13 to 65 goalies using that. So not having a bootstrap is definitely dominating. But now let's look at True leg pads, and I'm going to try to break down all the crazy models I saw this year. So the most popular option was the PX5 pad, with 17 of the True goalies using the PX5. We had one goalie using the L12.1 pad with the PX5 graphic, that is Joey Decord. We have 4 goalies using the PX4, 2 using the PX4 graphic with an L4.14, think Hellebuck and Fleury. We have 2 goalies that were still using the PX3, 1 that was using the L95 with a PX4 graphic. Sorry, the L95 graphic with a PX4 core. See, I'm still slipping up on it, it's no big deal. We had 2 goalies using the L87 graphic that was actually a PX5, and then 1 goalie using the L20.2 that is Lucas Dostal. Then when we look at Bauer, this is pretty interesting that a lot of goalies that were using ultrasonic switch to the Flylight, or what I believe is the pro version of the Flylight. So it's pretty interesting to look at this. So we had 5 goalies using a digiprint graphic on a Flylight core, 2 using a digiprint graphic on an ultrasonic core. Then we have 1 goalie using a digiprint graphic with a 2S Pro core. That would be Ilya Sorokin. I call it digiprint. It's really just a shadow graphic, but for semantics, if you were to order that from Bauer, that's how you classify it. We have 2 whole Bauer shadow pads, just like stock shadow pads, 2 shadow graphics and a Flylight core, 2 shadow graphics with a Hyperlight 2 core, 1 shadow graphic with a mock core, and then 1 Hyperlight 2 graphic with a shadow core. That would be Andrei Vasilevsky. Then looking at Vaughn, CCM, and Bryans respectively, we had 4 goalies using the SLR4, 1 goalie using the SLR3 with an SLR2 core. That is Calvin Pickard. He did that for all of his gear. We have 1 VX1 pad with a V4 core, then a VX1 pad with a V10 core. That is pretty much going to be Quick and Mrazek respectively. Quick still using that V4 7600 style with like that VX1 graphic over top. And then 1 pretty much normal Vaughn V10 and 1 pulse graphic on the Vaughn V10. That would be Jackson Stauber. Looking at CCM gear, we have 3 eFlex 7 users, 1 eFlex 7 graphic that was actually an eFlex 5 core, that is Dustin Wolf, and then we have 1 all-out graphic, which is the eFlex 7 core, that would be David Riddick, and then Stuart Skinner as the only one in CCM Access XF Pro. And then finally with Bryans, an even split of 2 Optic 4s and 2 Iconics, so pretty interesting to look at that number there. All right, so I know what you're thinking. If you've made it through this far into the video and you're not a numbers guy, you've been holding on for dear life. But if you are a stat-driven person like myself, then you love hearing all this information. But I want to make a special chapter here at the end where it just basically goes over all the popular pieces of gear for all of the major 8 categories that I looked at. So I'm going to go in the same order that I just put out all the information in. So I'm going to go backwards of skates to pads. So looking at the skates, the most popular is the true 2-piece with the Vertex edge holder. The helmet, the most popular is the Pro's Choice. Sticks, the most popular graphic is the Bauer Hyperlight 2. For the chest, the most popular is the CCM Pro. For pants, the most popular is the SLR3. For the blocker, the most popular is the PX5 595. And then for the glove, the most popular is a true 600, not the 590, sorry. Yeah, I know, I just said that the 590 dominated for true, but the reason why I did the 600 is because out of all the goalies, more use the 600 just as a whole. So that's kind of how I'm kind of classifying it there. And then the most popular pads would be the true PX5. So there are 2 goalies that out of all the goalies I filmed that pretty much fit this bill. One has 7 of the 8 categories and one has 6.5 out of the 8 categories, but I don't have any goalie that I filmed this year that hits the button for all of those major 8 categories. But the closest one that I do have is Samuel Ersson of the Philadelphia Flyers. He is using the PX5 pads, the 600 break PX5 glove, the 595 blocker, SLR3 pants, a CCM Pro chest, Hyperlight 2 sticks, a Bauer profile helmet instead of a Pro's Choice, then true 2-piece skates with a Vertex edge holder. And in second place in terms of the most popular gear used was Casey DeSmith of the Dallas Stars with the PX5 pad glove and blocker, with the 600 glove, 595 blocker, SLR3 pants, CCM Pro chest, true 9x4 sticks, a Pro's Choice helmet, true 2-piece skates with a stock shift holder. If he had the Vertex edge holder, I would actually say that he's kind of tied for first place there because of having that helmet. But alas, that's where we are with the 2 goalies that pretty much have the most popular setups in the NHL, is Samuel Ersson and Casey DeSmith. Kind of a wild stat. So if you were interested, if you kind of filter by the 590 break for true as who would be then the most popular looking setup, that would actually be Freddie Anderson with the Carolina Hurricanes. He had PX5 pad glove and blocker with the 590 glove, the 595 blocker, SLR3 pants, CCM Pro chest, and then the sticks he actually had a true 9x3, not the Hyperlight 2. He still was using a Pro's Choice helmet, but he had true one-piece skates. So still the most popular for true, but not the most popular model. So I'd say like 6 of 8, 6.5 out of 8 categories. That would be your most popular goalie if you filter by that most popular true glove break of the 590, not the most popular overall break of the 600. So I know this list is very big, it's very long, there's going to be a lot of text on the side of the screen, there's going to be a lot going on in these videos, but keep in mind, I'm going to do my best to put all the description, or I'm going to do my best to put everything down in the description down below, and I'm working on a way to be able to host this information for you to view. I hope you guys really got to enjoy this video and learn more about the advanced stat lines that I was able to kind of provide and look at this year. I kept a really big catalog of all this information. Again, I'm looking to share it in another way as well. I really hope you guys get to learn from this and kind of know what the most popular gear is of the goalies I filmed. Whether you want to follow suit or you don't want to be popular and you just want to just use whatever to be the complete opposite, you are more than welcome to do that as well. My name is Dudo and I'm the Goalie Gear Snob, and thank you for watching this video about the advanced stats. If you would like to learn more about my top 10 favorite setups from this past NHL season, click that video right there. Or if you'd like to watch all the NHL warm-ups from this past year, click that playlist right there.